right, folks, here we are, the Kickin Show, and this is our 5th episode. And pay no attention to the background. I am not at home tonight, so you don't see all the cool NASCAR stuff or the Kurt bobblehead. I don't have it. Just happened to pull up at a Honda dealership. Does not have any reference whatsoever to the Racer Magazine story today about Honda and NASCAR. But we're not going to talk about that. There was no news in NASCAR this week, so we're going to entertain you with, wow, Justin, you pulled off a coup. You got Matt Corson on the show tonight. How'd you make that happen?
I did. We got a special guest today. No, yeah. So we've got Seth and Zach hanging out with us, me and Jerry like usual. But Matt also writes for Kickin' the Tires. He's usually been pretty busy whenever we do these recordings. So it's awesome to see a new face here on the show. Very familiar to us, but we're proud to introduce all you guys to Matt Corson. So Matt, how have you been lately?
Doing good, man. Just slaving away at work. So I'm off tonight, so I get to enjoy being at home. So, and the times just worked out to where I could come join you guys. So couldn't pass that up.
So
how's Jeff doing?
Hold on. You enjoyed being at home and your day off work with Jerry?
Yeah, for the most part. It's only an hour.
For only an hour.
Tell Jeff I said hi.
I'll let him know next time I see him.
Awesome. Well, glad to have you on the show. Looking forward to hearing your insight. Not too much news up until today, which is Wednesday. Then obviously all of NASCAR broke loose with the 2021 schedule. We'll get to that later on. You'll see down in the description a timestamp. If you're here just specifically for that, you can click on that. It'll skip you right up to that portion of our podcast. Otherwise, we'll talk about a few other things first and get rolling on that. So first off,
Let me interrupt.
You're gonna interrupt.
Like and subscribe.
Oh, yes.
Like and subscribe.
And ring the bell.
And ring the bell. Yeah, ring the bell.
Ring the bell.
But
do
like
thing.
and
I need to do like some animation like right here. I'm gonna do that right there.
Perfect. Perfect.
How do I
So
do this?
yeah, we can do that in post production. But seriously, if you're watching the show, we appreciate it. We really love the support for. This has been a great endeavor. We're going to continue it, and but definitely like and subscribe so we can get our numbers up and continue to make everybody happy and show how stupid I can be sometimes.
And let us know in the comments too. Jerry and I have been talking about a goal of trying to get some drivers, crew members, or some other media members on our show. So let us know in the comments who you want to see on the podcast, and we'll do our best to maybe get you a little birthday gift here. So. But let's start with some of the other things outside of the schedule. So first off, Ryan Vargas with the TikTok paint scheme. I know, Seth, you've been covering a lot of that. So why don't you go ahead and give everyone the rundown with that, why that's such a big deal and how it's important with NASCAR right now.
Well, for Vargas, it all started actually on iRacing. One of his friends, who is a paint scheme designer, Ryan Pistana, he designed some of the schemes that are on track. JD Motorsports comes to mind. And he created a fictional TikTok car back in early July. And apparently somebody from TikTok saw it, got in touch with NASCAR about sponsoring Vargas, and it was going to be a one-race deal. And the more they got to know Ryan, the more it grew, and it grew as of right now to the final 6 Xfinity races for this year. And the head of TikTok on Twitter actually, after the announcements of the Cup schedule, in which some of Xfinity races were announced, even went and said they can't wait to see Vargas on track in the number 6 TikTok car next year, fighting for the checkered flag. And for JD Motorsports, which that's an underfunded team, they usually have a rotation of drivers. Jeffrey Earnhardt's driven for him. Mike Wallace is driven for him. David Starr. Ross Chastain used to drive for them.
Garrett Smithley.
I mean, the list goes on and on for who it's. It kind of reminds me.
Benny Miller.
Yeah.
Benny Miller used to drive for him.
It kind of reminds me of the Mittler brothers, how they used to give everybody a chance at some point, and it's almost a who's who of current NASCAR or possibly future NASCAR stars that have come through their stable that are currently on track. For Vargas, this is actually his first major sponsorship. Mm-hmm. And for a company the size of TikTok, and that's oriented towards, I would say, millennials, Gen Z, etc. It's almost like a new wave of sponsorship is coming in there, focused on a newer, younger fan base. I mean, we could almost compare it to DoorDash and Cash App sponsoring Bubba Wallace in the same vein, so to speak.
Yeah, Jerry, have we ever had like a social media platform ever sponsor NASCAR before?
Well, we had to deal with Twitter as a total entity with NASCAR. Twitter and NASCAR had a partnership a few years ago,
Right.
and not that I'm bitter about it or anything, but even after talking to them in person and going out to LA, I'm still not verified on Twitter. And then
Hashtag verified Jerry.
yeah, that dude that runs Facebook, he drove a car at Charlotte Motor Speedway one time, but I don't know if it was actually a Facebook sponsorship anywhere. He went out and did like a life in the day in the life of Zuckerberg, and I think Dale Jr. went out there. So
I want to say Reddit has sponsored the car. I think they sponsored Corey LaJoy in the All-Star Open once.
wasn't that a fan? Was that a fan thing, kind of like the Dogecoin with Matt
It might have been. It might have been, but that might be the closest that we've come to a social media network of some sort sponsoring stock car.
I just looked it up, and I see that Landon Castle was sponsored by Snapchat in 2016 at Charlotte.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ooh, I'm gonna have to find that picture of that car. That's weird.
Yeah.
I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna plug pictures right in here and just go like, here's like all the sponsored like social media cars we've ever seen on the track.
See, I don't use a lot of Snapchat. I don't use a lot of Instagram. I use Twitter without a blue check. But other than that,
Jerry's not gonna let that go. Matt, do you use TikTok at all?
I don't really create anything. I just kind of just watch and laugh,
That's what Rachel does. She's like sending me like 5 videos every night. Like, look at this funny video. Ha.
Yeah, it's like you're sitting there, someone sends you one, you open it, and then you spend the next 2 hours. It's like, dang you for sending me that.
Okay, let's think about this. Why do I need a TikTok when I can go on the Kickin show in the parking lot of a Honda dealership in Montgomery, Alabama? Okay, I mean I'm in Montgomery, Alabama in a Honda dealership. I don't need TikTok.
Because TikTok,
unless you want to sponsor us. If they want to sponsor us, we need you badly.
Yeah, maybe that's something that'll pique some other people's interest too. But
yes. I'll take all the sponsors we can get right now.
Right? No, it's always exciting to see new sponsors come in the sport, and I know it's always fun for the drivers to introduce people who maybe have never been to a race before, let alone sponsoring a car or something like that. So that's a cool, unique opportunity for Ryan. Great job on his part to being able to market himself. But going on to a couple other topics here real quick. Gracie Trotter winning in ARCA, becoming the first female to win in an ARCA sanctioned race. Now, just to make sure that's clear, Haley Deegan won in a K&N sanctioned race, so it's not ARCA, although most of the rulebook is somewhat similar. But technically, the sanctioning body being ARCA, Gracie Trotter gets those honors and getting the first win. What do you guys think of this? I feel like Gracie and Haley are going to be probably the next 2 females coming up. Matt, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's great. It's great to see a female get in the victory lane and succeed. I don't think anyone really saw that win coming, so it kind of shocked a lot of us, and it'll be interesting to see what the next couple of races entail, to see if she can keep it up and eventually move up the ladder into trucks and Xfinity and maybe Cup sometime down the road.
See, Matt, I want to weigh in there because I wasn't expecting it to come, but seriously, 2 weeks ago, I had a conversation with some people in the ARCA series, and they were like, "You need to watch this young lady," and I was like, "Okay, I've never really heard of her." And then she goes out and wins. So props to her. Says that's a heck of an accomplishment.
Yeah, for sure. I don't really follow ARCA as much as I should, but I like you, I'd never heard of her, so I think it just kind of caught me by surprise. It wasn't a common name, if you will.
I may be the only one here that had heard of her beforehand, and the main reason is a few years ago I was writing for a short track scene, and I covered the Bojangles Summer Shootout. Gracie was the first woman to win the Young Lions class race in that division. She then followed that up 2 weeks later with a second win. I think she finished second in the championship that year. I forget, but she also was just the fourth woman to win at Hickory Motor Speedway a few weeks ago as well. So she's been racking up some of these accolades as well, kind of under the radar to a certain point. Granted, I wasn't expecting her to win this quickly. That's how I would word it. She started ninth in the race, and she got out to the lead fairly early, and she led 95 laps. At one point, she had a 4-second lead at the Las Vegas pole ring, which I don't think that's very common in any car there. Other than that, she outran her teammates, Jesse Love, who's been dominating that series this year. And again, to a certain point, it is the same series that Haley won in a handful of times. To a certain point, it's not. The ARCA sanctioned rulebook, there's slight differences in the engine and the chassis, which it's above my head for how technical it is. I'll admit that, but there are differences here and there. So technically, they're different series at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, Seth, you definitely touched on it. I mean, it wasn't one of those races where you kind of luck into a win. I mean, for anybody who watched it, I mean, she won it for real. I mean, she had a dominating race car. She had a great restart move on the inside of Jesse Love. I think it was almost 3 wide. I mean, she kind of got them. They kind of made contact. She swept through to the lead, and I'm like, all right, sweet. She's first lap's led. Let's see how she handles. I didn't think she was going to hang on to the lead. The Sunrise 4 guys of Trevor Huddleston and Lane Perkins and then Jesse Love. I felt like they were going to be quicker than she was, but she got out to the lead, and she maintained a solid 2-second gap most of the race and got up to 4 seconds at one point. And I mean, there was a few late restarts, and she had all the opportunities to make the mistakes, and she didn't make any. She led almost 100 laps, and a few guys dropped out, but that's part of winning a race.
Yeah.
And only because these comparisons are going to be inevitable, there's no real way of avoiding them. Haley, in her 3 wins, the most laps she ever led in any of those 3 races was her final win, and she led, I shouldn't say final, most recent, and she led 66 laps in that race.
Didn't she also get a win at Vegas?
The
Dirt race,
dirt
right?
track.
Yeah.
Dirt track, okay.
The dirt track. And that one, she only led the final lap,
Okay.
I believe. And for Gracie, she led 95 laps, and those are the first laps she's led in her career.
Yeah, and it's good for female talent. I mean, if you look at the West Series themselves, very small field, only 12 cars win that race, 11 usually. 4 of them are female, so it's good to see one of the series are getting a lot of female talent. And I mean, I remember drivers like Julia Landauer and Nicole Behar. I mean, drivers who I felt like really showed that potential, but they would only finish 3rd, 2nd, win an occasional pole, a lot of top 5s, but they just never won. And with a series as small as the West Series, even the East, I feel like the East is a little above the West just because of the talent that we usually see. But with a series like that, you just have to win to get attention. Not for women drivers, just any driver. It's really tough nowadays with all these young drivers to stand out. And if you win just once, I mean, I think in her position, as you mentioned earlier, Justin, not a lot of people know her name, but now they do. You know, now there's articles on NBC written about her, and this is going to be a huge help for her career. And hopefully she wins more and she keeps her name in the fight, because it's great to see Haley Deegan doing really well. But hell, it's have another one. It's great to see.
Yeah,
I'm not sure if I saw the tweet that went around of the little girl watching the last lap.
Yeah.
She was jumping up and down, screaming, "A girl won, a girl won." I just think that's so awesome for the young female fans of our sport to maybe if they didn't want to cheer for Haley Deegan, they have another option now, you know. So I think that was just really awesome to see for the younger generation.
Yeah.
And with Danica Patrick out of the sport, it's been a couple years. I mean, it's literally perfect timing for girls like Haley and Gracie to come up the ladder.
Sure.
Totally.
By the way, speaking of females in NASCAR, I reached out to Summer. She's been working. Summer works for us and hadn't been on the podcast. She wants to join us next week if she can. So we're going to bring, we'll have her and Sarah hopefully back next week. So that'll be at a female perspective. I wish we could have gotten them this week with this news of the win.
Definitely. All right, well, let's move on to what happened out in Vegas this weekend.
Nothing.
Nothing at all. Not at all. So Austin Hill, we'll talk about the Truck Series here real quick. Austin Hill getting the win. He's the first one to get locked into the round of 8 because Sam Mayer won back at Bristol last weekend. And if you guys don't realize this, Austin Hill was 7th in the points lineup after that race. But because of his win, he's already locked in. So that gave him a lot of nice comfort zone going into next weekend's race for something like that. So any kind of extra thoughts on the truck race?
Go ahead, Seth.
Well, I was going to say, not only that, we also had a little bit of a race within the race, and what I'm talking about is Connor Daly and Travis Pastrana running essentially they had a $1 bet from their iRacing league. Whichever one finished better would get a framed signed dollar bill from the other. And Connor Daly in his NASCAR Oval debut, finished 18th. He stayed on the lead lap until the final lap when he had a transmission explode while the leaders were lapping him.
Yeah,
it was
didn't
good
he finish
for
the race under fire?
He did,
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
No, I was just going to say it's good for Austin Hill to bounce back. I mean, he made contact with Austin himself in the truck race at Bristol. I think he finished somewhere in the 25th, 24th, and it was good to see him bounce back because I think he had said, you know what, we're going to come back and win next weekend in Vegas, and sure enough, he did.
And it was a smart race, too, for him. I mean, we saw Sheldon Creed was the absolute dominator. I mean, he has been, when it comes to standout drivers in the truck series, I don't really think of Austin Hill. He kind of proved himself to me last year. Even back with Young's Motorsports, I always felt like he was a good talent, but Sheldon Creed's been killing it this year. He's had some races get away. Darlington was one of them, now here, but I mean, he was gaining on Hill on that outside lane, and Austin just drove up and started using that outside lane, and with that fresh air, he was able to just stay ahead of him. So it was a strong race for him, but also a smart one. And after the rough Bristol, I mean, you're like, he has a bad Vegas. I mean, we got Talladega. Dang, he could be out of this. He'd be out of the playoffs already. So for him to get that win, he has to feel amazing.
Well, talking about getting out of the playoffs already, Ben Rhodes not having a good day in Vegas, rolling some snake eyes there. So you got Ben Rhodes and Todd Gilliland below the cutoff line with Christian Eckes, Matt Kraft, and Tyler Ankrum, just a few of the guys above the cutoff line. One race to go. Who are the two that are going to be eliminated in a round of 10? Matt, you're new. Let's start with you.
You know, I think Christian Eckes and Matt Crafton, I don't think they survived Talladega.
I definitely think Ben Rhodes is going to be okay. I know he's a solid plate racer. Generally doesn't get the finishes, but he always ends up being at the front late. Usually gets wrecked out at Daytona. Don't really remember Dega too much for him, but I'll say Ben is going to be okay. Todd's going to be okay. Just looking at the names here, I'll probably have to say Eckes, agreeing with him. And if it wasn't a plate race or a super speedway, I would say Ankrum would be okay, but I'm not really getting the feels for him for Dega. So I'm going to go with Ankrum and Eckes. Going to be on the way out.
Meanwhile, for me, I'm kind of going to split the difference. I'm going to say Ankrum and Ben Rhodes. I just something about ThorSport the past few years, ever since the Ilmore engine came into the truck series, and it's specifically ThorSport too. No matter what happens, one of their trucks seems to have an issue at some point in the weekend. And with no practice this year, or qualifying, it's basically been in race. So I just don't see him being able to claw his way back out.
Man, I used to do PR for one of the satellite teams for Thor Sports, so I always hate to pull against them. But I could see Ankrum getting knocked out. But and the problem with Talladega is that anything can happen. So when you start talking about Kraft and he's going to be up there and he's going to be fighting for it, I'd hate to see him get caught up in it, but man, really, it could happen.
Yeah, for some reason, I'm not feeling it with Ankrum, especially this year. Only 3 top 5s, and out of all the playoff drivers, the least amount of laps led. So I think it's going to be Ankrum, and I'd probably put Todd Gilliland in that bottom 2 to be getting kicked out. So, all right, well, let's go on to Xfinity Series, where they started their playoffs. Chase Briscoe picking up right where he left off, getting win number, 8 of the year, I think?
Yes.
And didn't Chase Briscoe even say earlier this year that if he was going to get a cup ride, he'd have to have 8 wins or something like that?
He did say that.
He did, and he was actually asked about that earlier this week, and he said when he said that back in February that he was joking. So whether or not he was joking or whether or not he was serious, only he knows.
Well, here's the thing. I don't think he's going to get 8 wins. I think he's going to get 10. So
I think at this rate he's going to end up with 11 or 12.
Yeah. I mean, the kid's on fire, and it couldn't happen to a nicer guy. So
no, him and his wife both are 2 of the sweetest Xfinity people in the garage.
And he actually told a story during the availability earlier this week. He got the ride in ARCA, and I think I'm quoting this correctly. He got the ride in ARCA because originally Briggs Cunningham had offered the ride to Kyle Weatherman, except Kyle was eating dinner and never returned the call.
Oh, boy.
And he regrets that.
And so that ended up going to Chase, and the rest is kind of history.
Wow. Yeah, so Briscoe getting win number 8. One notable I wanted to share about, though, because so Rachel and I went to Vegas. Rachel covered the truck race, and I got to cover Xfinity and the Cup race. And I kept my eye on about 5 different drivers. For the most part, everyone stayed up in the top 5, except for one of those 5 drivers I was watching all day, and that was Justin Allgaier. Boy, did he drop like a rock. I don't think he scored any stage points, if I remember correctly.
He scored 2 in stage 2.
2 in stage 2. Okay, so he did get a couple points. So, but compared to some of the other guys up there, definitely nowhere near where he should have gotten. But man, did all of that crew get together and salvage a finish where he probably shouldn't even finished in the top 5, and sure enough, he brings it home 4th somehow. And that's what a championship team does, is they try to minimize points lost as much as they can and get what they can, or in some cases when they gamble, get something that they probably shouldn't be getting and sneak away with it. So kudos to that team. I know that's one that I've picked to be in the Final 4. Don't really have an elimination race coming up, and I know we've kind of already talked about who we think are going to be in the Final 4 for Xfinity, except for you, Matt. So why don't you go ahead and chime in? Who do you think are going to be your Final 4 for the Xfinity playoffs?
Yeah, so I could definitely see Ross Chastain. He's kind of dug himself in a little bit of a hole, but we got Talladega coming up. He definitely won at Daytona last year, so maybe he can pull some rabbit out of the hat next weekend. Chase Briscoe for sure. How can you go against him? I mean, obviously Allgaier too, coming off. He's at 4 straight top 5s now, which I think he should be. That's crazy to think, because he had a really bad start last season and start to this year. So to rally off 4 straight top 5s going into the playoffs, I mean, what better time to do it?
I told you guys earlier that on I think show 1 or 2 that Allgaier was a real deal, and I expect him to go to Cup. He plays it down, and he plays his cards pretty close to the best. But that kid, he knows what he's doing, and he's definitely a threat.
I do want to point out a couple of good run. Well, one good run that turned bad, and then one good run that ended great. And that was definitely Ryan Sieg. He was one guy who jumped out to me. It's been a weird year for him. I feel like he started off really well before COVID, but since then he went a while without a top 10, and now he's starting to kind of put together some finishes. But that was great to see, him back in the lead for a little bit and actually racing Chastain for the lead legitimately. That was super cool. He couldn't get the pass done, but he was up in the top 3, top 5. I think he had a bad pit stop a little later, and I thought, my competition's so close, might be tough to get back to where he was, but he ends up with the top 5 and a lot of points earned, and it was just a solid night for him. And then the guy who ended up finishing poorly was Chastain. Maybe you guys know if he had an issue or not, but I mean, he was so strong.
He did hit the wall.
Early.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I was gonna say, I think
that was
damage,
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. I mean, he ended up being the worst finisher, even behind Brandon Brown. I think he was 16th. So I mean, overall, he didn't lose a ton of points, but yeah, he hasn't been able to get that win yet this year. And we saw Bristol. I mean, it's definitely in his head to a certain point, but I mean, he's such a talented driver. I think he's always going to race as hard as he can. Doesn't matter if he has, like Chase Briscoe's 8 wins or if he's winless. I think he's always going to race the same. So that's what I love about him.
Well, just a quick explanation on Ryan Sieg. The middle of the season wasn't the best for him. About the midpoint of the season, they actually formed a partnership with Rayom Brothers Racing in the Truck Series for Rayom to take over fielding of the 93 car that Mike Snyder and Jeff Green drive, so that way Sieg could focus on the 39. And when they did that, the performance of the 39 car started to get back up to where it's been. And in the playoffs, I think they're leasing an ECR motor similar to Brandon Brown, and it seems like they came to life this week.
I want to step back real quick. I said, Allgaier would end up in Cup. He's already been in Cup. Just he had a ride with H. Scott Motorsports, and that team went away, and then he ended up where he's at now. So I specifically think that he may be a candidate for a Hendrick ride. So I wanted to clarify that.
Yeah. Perfect. So yeah, we've got with the Xfinity Series, like I said, 2 more races before their next cutoff. So they got Talladega and the Roval. Same with Cup. We got Chastain, Annette, Herbst, and Brown below the cutoff line right now. But going to Cup, man, that race. I'll say the race was actually kind of lackluster up until that caution during that green flag pit stop, and boy, did that change everything.
I don't know that contact between, what was it? Hamlin moving up the track, pushing Kyle into Joey Logano. I mean, those guys already hate each other. They have a history of fighting at Las Vegas. I figured after the race that they were going to tie into each other, and but that didn't happen apparently. But still, of any driver of the garage, how is it that the two that hate each other the most, that they trash talk how can they always end up getting contact and ruining each other's day?
They always say you got to keep your friends close and your enemies closer, right? So
yeah, I don't think cutting a tire down and tearing up the fenders is exactly what they're talking about. But I was happy to see the winner of that race with some strategy and some good luck with some cautions falling the way they did.
I was just gonna blame your magic bobblehead.
Y'all laughed at me, and Kurt is locked in to the next round. The magic bobblehead was right.
Yeah, Jerry, that incident between Joey Logano and Kyle Busch, whenever I saw the M&M's car and the Pennzoil car tangle up going into turn 3, that was reminiscent of just a few years ago. And I thought to myself, I was like, man, this is like deja vu.
There's going to be a fight.
Yeah.
Here's a fun fact. That's the race Rachel and I met. Was that spring or that April 2020 or 2017 race when Kyle and Joey got together on pit road.
Yeah,
y'all married. Yeah, the rest is history.
Yep.
That was my first race at Las Vegas, so it was pretty memorable to go to that one.
I think there would have been more frustration in that issue if it wasn't for Denny. I mean, that move that he made to the bottom was so last minute. I mean,
Yeah.
we saw the onboards, and they were almost starting to turn into the corner almost, and he pops out to the inside super early in the race to make a move like that. But I mean, I'm never gonna criticize people for racing aggressively. Race aggressively on the first lap. 10 laps in, I don't care. I just want to see some fun racing. So he went for the move, and I think Kyle just wasn't able to time it out. Like it kind of shocked him a little bit, and Joey probably didn't even know he was top of 3 wide. So they all kind of come together, and it ended up being a tough decision that the 22 had to make because he wasn't losing a tire, but he had a bunch of smoke, and it ended up being. I guess we'll never know if it was a good decision or not, but there ended up not being that many cautions. So he got stuck a lap down, and it took a long time for him to even gain positions. But hey, at the end of the day, he may have cut in a tire and crashed and finished in 38th. So I would say it was still a good decision to pit.
Yeah.
I would say the two drivers that had frustrating nights, or at least frustrating ends to the night, would probably end up being Chase Elliott and Austin Dillon. Austin Dillon with the water and oil belt failures that caused him to overheat, go to pit road, and he lost, I believe, 8 or 9 laps. He was able to get 1 or 2 back through the wave round.
They changed it. They changed it in 8 laps. His water temps got up to 330 degrees. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Your car's not supposed to run that hot.
And then for Chase Elliott, it looked like on the final restart he was going to line up essentially where Cole Custer lined up at Kentucky a few months ago, I should say. And Ryan Newman popped out in line in front of him, and he just could not get around Newman and fell back like a rock. There was nothing he could do at that point. Although I will say, I think it's his favorite track at this point, or one of his. The Roval is next week, so he probably has a decent chance at that. Talladega might as well just put a bunch of names in a hat and pull one out.
Yeah, I think one last guy was Bowman, who I would say was really disappointing. I mean, obviously Chase's teammate. I don't think he has as well a track record on the Roval and Talladega, but he had a great car on Sunday. There was 3 or 4 guys who I felt like were right in the hunt, but he was kind of one of them. He went from nearly winning it if it ran green to the end. He had those tires, and it was going to be really close. I was so jacked because it was Denny behind him who was chasing Bowman. Bowman was chasing DiBenedetto, who was behind Kurt. They were all kind of coming together. I think it was like 8 to go, which was like the perfect amount of time. But that really ended up hurting Bowman, and he goes from winning and advancing in to now he's only, I think, 9 points to the good with 2 of the most demanding tracks of the year. So that was a killer for him.
Yeah, and then obviously Kurt Busch getting the win. Again, another guy getting a win that's around that bubble line. In fact, this time below. He would have been below that cutoff line by 2 points, and that would have put Kyle above the cutoff line. But that win locking him in secures that playoff spot. He doesn't have to worry about Talladega or the Roval. That puts Kyle Busch, his brother, below the cutoff line, and Boyer, Almirola, and Dillon with his unfortunate day at that race. Even though he was running top 5, top 10 all day, those are going to be the bottom 4. But let's talk about the other 2 guys that weren't in the playoffs that took really good advantage of that timely caution. And that's Matt DiBenedetto getting pretty much sweeping second place at Vegas, and Ryan Blaney showing that he didn't get eliminated in the first round for nothing. So 2 non-playoff drivers showing some good strength there.
He got eliminated because he didn't get enough points, but he definitely didn't, never forgot how to race, and he was battling it hard there at Vegas, just like Matt D getting eliminated in the first round, still battling. Neither one of them gave up, and that shows what kind of racers they are. I didn't think anybody would get around Kurt unless it was Denny, because Denny had tires and faster car, but Kurt was going to make that car as wide as possible. And he's done drag racing. He's done other forms of motorsports. he pulled out a few magic tricks out of his hat to on those restarts there. It worked in his favor, and he was able to sail away. But I say sail away. He got out front, and I don't know if anybody would have passed him other than, like I said, maybe Denny.
Yeah.
It's like Kurt said post race. He said Denny wasn't going to get around me because he had more to lose than I did. So
there's that. And breaking news: the Monday night NASCAR sponsored by Kickin the Tires. Mario Andretti wants to run another race with us, and apparently they're going to do IndyCar at Indy again on either the 12th or the 19th of October.
Except it's not going to be broadcasted, that one, though.
It's not going to be broadcast, but props to Ford Martin and props to Paul Sutton for putting this whole deal together. We were honored to be a sponsor and of the inaugural season. And but yeah, they've done a great job, and I hold my hat is off to them, and have the utmost respect for what they've been able to do.
And I believe for their season finale, which included Mario Andretti, Max Pappas, Bobby Labonte, and Ryan Vargas, as well as myself and other media members, I believe they had somewhere around 7,000 viewers total.
Oh wow!
Which it's pretty sizable. I'm not sure what the average numbers are for podium, but back to the real life schedule.
Oh yeah.
My race didn't go well, so I don't want to talk about it.
Well, your race went better than mine, so.
Or mine.
All right, so with the 2021 schedule, last night, Chris Snyder over at Catch Fence breaking it first, and NASCAR this morning releasing it officially on their website. We've got a lot of changes to talk about with this 2021 schedule. A couple of the notables first, just to kind of get these out first, and then we'll talk about each of these individually. But the Clash is going to be first thing like usual, but it's going to be on the Daytona Road Course, not the Oval. After the Daytona 500 in Homestead, we've got the West Coast Swing with Auto Club, Vegas, and Phoenix. Then we go back to the East Coast out in Georgia with Atlanta. And then our first short track of the year at Bristol, but on dirt, whether you like it or not. Then we'll hit Martinsville and Richmond, pretty much the schedule through the rest of April, and most of May is pretty much the same up until we get around Memorial Day weekend, the weekend before, being at Circuit of the Americas.
COTA. There's my TikTok for the night.
While he was backing up.
Jerry, are there anyone around you right now?
Other than security and police trying to figure out what I'm doing now. I think we're good.
Jerry, look behind you.
Oh!
Yeah, right?
Circuit of the Americas coming on with, now this is an interesting deal. Speedway Motorsports Incorporated, the people that own Texas Motor Speedway, took their track time from Texas that would have been their spring race. They moved it to Circuit of the Americas. They're going to lease the track from the folks that run COTA. They're going to run a road course NASCAR Cup Series event there. And then Texas is going to get the All-Star race in June. So that's actually a really big change. And, for me being from Texas, I've been advocating for COTA to get a Cup Series race. Yeah. Heck, I've been advocating for it to get an Xfinity Series race ever since, just in case you didn't know this, Kurt Busch actually ran the first Cup Series car at COTA back in, I think, 2013 when he ran for Furniture Row Motorsports. He went out there and did a trade-off with the V8 supercars. But Tony Stewart did it a year or so ago in the 14 car as a one-off kind of test thing before F1 got to town. And I was down there taking photos of that. So big props to Speedway Motorsports, Marcus Smith, being able to pull that off and get COTA on the NASCAR Cup Series schedule.
I actually went down to COTA last year. I got to go down for the Trans Am race that they had down there. It's kind of a unique opportunity that came up for me. And I was just impressed with that facility. It's a world-class racetrack for sure. They got that cool little tower down in the middle of the racetrack. You can go up and get a really cool view. You got the skyline of Austin down in the background, and the airport's right there. You got flyovers all day long. So I'm really excited for NASCAR to get down to southern Texas. You got a lot around that area, San Antonio, Austin. It's a market that we've never really had, so it's great for the sport.
What did you think of the media center?
I didn't get to go in the media center.
Oh, dude, it's built for F1, so it's like 20 times bigger than whatever we have on Cup.
Let me guess, all your desks have like 30 buttons on them, just like the F1 steering wheels.
No, but it is huge, and you know, you will have plenty of room to social distance next year when you come to COTA.
That's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, I'm definitely really, really excited about this change. I mean, just as the news was kind of coming in today, I mean, last night and then officially today, that was one that really stood out to me. Just someone who's followed F1 for a decent amount of years now. Just in that same realm, it kind of joins that short list of tracks that have run Formula One, IndyCar, and NASCAR Cup Series. Not too many, honestly. I mean, Watkins Glen is one, but for COTA, I mean, a fairly new facility to have F1, NASCAR, and now Cup in 8 years' time. I mean, that's incredibly impressive. So
they had MotoGP too.
MotoGP, sports cars, yeah.
They've had a lot of different series there, and hey, that MotoGP stuff, that's crazy. Those guys in MotoGP are nuts, but it's going to be insane. It's going to be insane seeing Cup cars there.
I can race. I race dirt motocross and supercross, but man, I could never. Nope, not on asphalt. No, thank you. Nope, I want four wheels on asphalt.
But what a big year it is! It's going to be for Texas. I mean, Jerry was one of the first people I thought of because you got the debut of COTA, you got the All-Star race at Texas. I'm one of the few people who really enjoys Texas and the new layout. I think it breeds, a lot of desperate moves on restarts because it is tough to get down to that bottom lane. A lot of aggression, more than most mile and a halves, and they still keep a points race, and it's in the playoffs. So I mean, I don't think they really lost too much. I mean, they lost a point race, but they gained a non-point race, which can possibly lead to more excitement.
When I talked to Eddie Gossage today, he was like, and he told everybody this too, he always wanted the All-Star race, but that was Charlotte's race, and he didn't want to covet thy neighbor's possession, or covet thy brother's possessions, is what he said. But here's the thing: they've got the All-Star race now, and more importantly than just that, they got off of opening day of hunting season at Texas Motor Speedway. So when they were racing back in November, or the first weekend of November, or the last weekend of October, that bumps up right up to hunting season. When look, that's a big deal in Texas. It may not be a big deal the rest of the country, but deer season in Texas is like it's a national holiday in our state. So so yeah, that was always a troublesome issue with having fans in the stands, and this is going to be a big deal for him. Running, I think, on the 16th or 17th that weekend of October.
17th. Yeah.
See, not bad from memory. I've been driving all afternoon.
Yeah, COTA not being the only new road course on the Cup schedule, at least. Cup is also now going to be racing at Road America and the Indianapolis road course. I think we saw a really good finish on Indianapolis last year with or earlier this year, with the Xfinity Series. So definitely looking forward to that. And one new oval track right after the All-Star race at Texas, we are going to Nashville. All right, we're not excited about that. So, anyway.
I'm pumped.
Yeah. I was gonna say, Matt, you're over by Nashville. There you go. You can stay at home and don't have to be at a hotel, right? Or is it a little bit further of a drive than that?
No, 15 minutes. I can throw a rock and hit it.
Oh, beautiful. So
I could fly my drone from his house and hit the track with the drone.
Yep.
It's pretty much that close. And actually, I've been to Nashville when they raced there. Bobby Hamilton won the race that I was at there. I was doing PR for a Thor Sports satellite team at the time. So I'm excited about it, but it's going to be different because of the Cup cars running there versus trucks, Xfinity, or whatever.
And I think Steve O'Donnell said too today that they're bringing the low downforce package as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
And
they
the cars are completely different than what they were 10 years ago. And I'm sure maybe with some VHT, PJ1, whatever you want to call it, hopefully Nashville can put on an exciting race. I know a lot of people are bummed that it's not the fairgrounds. I've been by
Yeah,
the
Junior.
fairgrounds. There's no way it's going to be a cup race anytime soon. So, yeah, I'm excited for the Nashville market. Just not just because I live here, but I mean the closest tracks around here: Bristol, Talladega. I was going to say Kentucky, but can't say that now. So it's good for Middle Tennessee to get back on the map, and it's kind of ironic. Nashville lost to Kentucky back in 2011, and now they get the race, and Kentucky's off the schedule. So
Yeah, that's what I was going to mention too. Is obviously none of the playoff races were affected, so we've still got the same layout there. But Chicagoland and Kentucky losing some races, did that kind of surprise you guys? I know a lot of fans thought that Chicagoland really has been putting on some really good races, if not probably the best out of the mile-and-a-half tracks.
I think Chicagoland. I think once the news started trickling out, I want to say it was around April or so that NASCAR was wanting to sell some land there, build some warehouses. I think Jerry got to that one, but I think ever since that news came out, and then of course I think it was May, they announced that they laid off all their staff. I think it was kind of inevitable that Chicagoland wasn't going to be on the schedule next year. The track's in the middle of nowhere. It's actually nowhere near Chicago, so I enjoyed my visit out there last year. Seeing Alex Bowman win was really cool to see, not knowing now that that's the last race that was going to be there. But I liked going to Kentucky, man. I think Cincinnati is a great area. There's a lot of diehard fans in that part of the country. You got Louisville right there. Indy's a short drive. Lexington. So I'm kind of bummed about seeing Kentucky, but I know the racing hasn't been so great there lately, aside from a couple good finishes. So but yet again, Nashville won out on that one, so I'm a little happy for that.
Quick question. Does anybody here know what Cincinnati WKRP is?
No.
No.
Okay, never mind. Okay.
Well-
Those that are watching this podcast will figure out that y'all are all a bunch of youngsters. It was a TV show back in the, back before you guys were born. It had Lonnie Anderson on it. So, but yeah, y'all yeah, she was hot. Okay, she was hot. Go look up Lonnie Anderson. And
Probably
anyway,
not when Rachel's around.
yeah, probably not. But look, I loved Kentucky. Mark Simmendinger put out the press release last night that they weren't going to have a race. That was sad to see those guys pull off the schedule. I don't think we were actually surprised by it. But Tim Bray, the PR guy out there, he has done a terrific job and always treated us great. They've had several other PR people that I just love dearly, and I hope that they can they can do other things at the track or maybe I'll find a job somewhere else in SMI if that's possible. I know there's been a lot of layoffs, but there were some really great people at Kentucky. Chicago, I was never a huge fan of Chicagoland Speedway. It's not Chicagoland Speedway to me. It's the state. I'm not a big fan of Illinois as a whole, but it's the track's actually located in Joliet, which is an hour south of downtown Chicago. So you felt like, as Matt said, it was out in the middle of nowhere. It was different. The racing had been good. They're coming to arrest me.
You talking bad about Illinois?
Yeah, the racing hit. Well, I'm in Alabama, so that's okay. The racing had been good for a while, but it hadn't always been good there. And I don't know if you guys remember or not. I think it was the Tropicana Orange rolled down the front stretch at the inaugural race or something.
Yep.
Yeah. So they've had some crazy stuff happen at Chicagoland.
I think that might have actually been 2004. I do remember it was Todd Zegedy that was out on track qualifying.
Yeah.
And the reason why I remember his name is being from up north. He was always running modifieds or push north way back when. So the name it's always stuck with me because it's somebody I grew up watching.
Yeah, an orange rolling down the track.
Yeah.
A giant orange.
Still want to say I still can't believe NASCAR started that race last year with the weather that was coming in, because that storm was wild.
Well, for me, it's not too surprising that both tracks are losing dates. It's kind of ironic Kentucky is losing a date to Atlanta because Atlanta lost its second date to Kentucky way back when.
Right.
And I will say this, at least for Alex Bowman, the 2 races he wins, Chicagoland and Auto Club, it's only a few months later that one shuts down and the other is being transformed into a short track or announced that's going to be. So it's almost like Alex Bowman is a little bit of a track killer lately.
Well, that's okay. He's not going to be happy with me because I know he's above the cut line, but I'm picking him to get knocked out. So I'm already in trouble with Alex this podcast. So,
He's not from Illinois, so
yeah. Marcus Smith actually said today on one of the interviews that we were on, it was a better business decision to move the race back to Atlanta than to keep it in Kentucky. So here's some things that you might not know about Atlanta. Obviously, the headquarters of Coca-Cola and a lot of other major big Fortune 500 companies. Georgia Pacific has a big presence there. Yeah. But they're building a casino there, or they're trying to get a casino built there. So there's a lot of stuff behind the scenes in that Hampton, Georgia region. Oh yeah, by the way, they filmed Walking Dead there, this is going to be the last season, but they filmed Zombieland there. There's a lot of different things that Atlanta Motor Speedway does that you never hear about, but they are huge in the movie and entertainment industry. So, to get a track there, another race there at that track is going to be even bigger for their bottom line. So that's I hate that, Ed Clark has retired, but Brandon Hutchinson he's a great guy, and he's going to do a really good job running that track. I mean, he was Ed's right hand man for forever. So it's a great facility. It's in good hands, and there's some really good people there. The PR staff is amazing, and I actually, it's one of my favorite tracks on the circuit, and I'm not ashamed to say that.
The media center is golden too.
Yes, the food.
Quick Trip, Quick Trip is my
not that I'm going to cut you guys off on that, but this year was supposed to be my first trip to Atlanta, and it was supposed to be my first trip as media to Atlanta. So I still have yet to experience that media center.
I was there for 4 hours.
Yeah. Well, me and Jerry were there when they closed the sport down. I went back in June, but I was outside the track, so you didn't miss a damn thing this year. But every other year prior.
Oh, gee, thanks.
Yeah, Atlanta's a killer track, and Jerry mentioned the market. I mean, that was something that Ben Kennedy and Steve really touched on. I mean, every question was like, what are the biggest markets? And that's where we want to align ourselves with. Yeah. The movie industry is huge there. I myself have shot 4 or 5 films in the Atlanta area. It's just, they're calling it the Hollywood of the East Coast because of just the taxes, and just they're able to film and set things up at a much better price than over there in LA. So it's exploding there. And I'm not really surprised about the Chicagoland situation, because, I mean, I think Matt just mentioned it. We kind of saw that one coming. I don't know, because we don't know the Xfinity or truck schedules yet. I don't know if those 2 tracks are still up for Xfinity truck races, or if they're down for the hour.
Some of them announced Xfinity and truck races, some didn't. I know Coda announced that they're going to be a triple header. I know Texas announced their Xfinity date in the playoffs. I believe there were a handful of others that announced triple header.
There's a truck race and an Xfinity race ahead of the All-Star race at Texas Motor Speedway as well.
So like I was saying, you can kind of piecemeal a schedule together to a certain degree, but you'll have some gaps and some holes, which are typically the standalone races that Xfinity or truck would have, and it's where those are that I think are some of the bigger question marks right now.
There's a short track outside Indianapolis. That would be great.
Yeah.
That's one of them. Well, for the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, the Cup race is moving from the oval to the road course. In conjunction, it's going to be a doubleheader weekend with IndyCar. They have said that they don't know what they're doing with Xfinity as of yet. So
if they want to make a lot of Xfinity fans happy, they'll, like Matt said, they'll run it down the road, but I don't think that's going to happen.
I could see maybe the trucks returning there. I don't see Xfinity returning there, unfortunately.
Yeah. So, Jerry, one question. Obviously, NASCAR usually releases the schedule in like August or so, and here we are.
No, NASCAR. Well, okay, so hold on. They used to release the schedule in August. Then they started releasing it in March or April. And I hate it when they do that. And now they had to do it this year in August or September because of COVID. So they had backed it up. We used to get the schedule between August and now. I think it's been as late as the beginning of October once. And the only reason I know this is because every time I see this, every time we're working on schedules, while all the schedule stuff was working last night, I was online. I know Matt did too. I was online getting hotels before the prices go up. And that's another way. That is another way that you verify race schedules. If you think you have a date, then you go to the hotels closest to that track on that date, and you see how much they've gone up, and you know that most likely that's going to be a race weekend. So that's another way of verifying what the schedule was that we were doing last night. But when we were releasing it in April or May, it really hurts because you can only make reservations, about 11 to 12 months out. So you can only get the first quarter of the season. I've got reservations for hotels all the way up to, August of next year. So we're doing pretty good.
Nice.
Hey man, just get Airbnb. I'm gonna get my stuff a week before the race and still save a lot more money than you.
You're probably right.
I was gonna say, are we all just gonna do an Airbnb for Phoenix next year?
Well,
I'm working on a deal.
And for me, I usually just book through my dad because he's a travel agent, so he gets some pretty good rates. I'll admit that. But technically speaking, they didn't say as far as Indianapolis if it's going to be a 400-mile or a 400-kilometer or whatever the length it's going to be for the road course, the length of the race, that is. So technically speaking, I guess the Brickyard 400 could continue, but be a 400-kilometer race on the road course.
A 400-mile race on the road course? There's going to be some guys passing out.
That's
why I said 400-kilometer.
Okay.
All right. Well, lots of new tracks added to this schedule. We'll just finish it up with this. With Jerry, we'll start with you. What's the one new track you're looking forward to seeing them race at?
I've never been to Road America. So I'm happy for that, but honest to God, the track that I'm glad we're going to is COTA, and I said that I got in trouble earlier by a certain track promoter in my area who was like, "Oh, you're happy to see a race go to COTA?" I said, "But not at the expense of your track." So, and that's exactly the answer that I think Steve O'Donnell was listening or somehow tapped into my call with this person, because Steve O'Donnell today, when I asked him about COTA, he's like, "We always liked COTA. We played it down because we didn't want it to come at the expense of Texas Motor Speedway." And so I'm happy that COTA is getting a race. I'm happy that it's an SMI promotion. I'm happy that Texas is getting a really cool deal with the All-Star race, and I get to see great racing in my home state. And look, my reservation for the hotels for Austin, I've already got them. I'm staying at the airport for $77 a night. I'm going to be there for 3 days. And, if y'all show up, I'll be happy to take you guys out on the town on 6th Street. Oh, I actually have 2 rooms. So if anybody needs one, let me know.
Matt, what about you? What's the one race you're looking forward to?
Yeah, so I'm kind of like Jerry. I've never been to Road America. It's actually the only track on the schedule that I haven't been to. So I'm really looking forward to going up to Wisconsin 4th of July weekend. That was a little shocker for me that they scheduled it for then, but I'm sure it's going to be real cool. I've heard the environment up there is really nice. So I'm looking forward to that. I think I've read that it's like a state park. The racetrack's in the state park with how scenic it is out there. So I'm looking forward to that. I also got my hotel room for $75 last night. So, but nice. I'm really looking forward to seeing Bristol on dirt. I mean, I don't like the idea, but I'm interested to see how it goes. I mean, I've been going to Bristol for the last 10 straight years. It's my home track until next year. So I love going to that place. People there are like family. We camp outside the racetrack all week long and just enjoy the race. So Bristol on Dirt's probably the one I'm looking forward to the most, whether if it's good or not.
Zach, I know you're eager for a track. What is it?
Is it Bristol Dirt? Are we getting into it? Are we starting? Yeah, I was going to touch on it. I had a couple I wanted to mention before we get into that, but Road America for sure. I agree with them. I've never been there. They made the Xfinity Series have been going 10 years now, and I have thoroughly enjoyed those races. A lot of different winners and a lot of passing zones. It's a massive track, over 4 miles. And after those 10 years, we kind of have a good taste of what Cup cars might be like, as opposed to like an Indy road course that only has one race, and COTA that's never seen a stock car race. But I just wanted to mention 2 things that also stood out to me on the schedule that were kind of surprises, and that was the double headers and midweek races that were kind of lacking. Those were 2 things that we saw this year. Pocono is repeating what they did this year with a double header, but no one else is. Like,
Well,
it was really one of the hot zones of the 2020 campaign, was seeing 2 races on a weekend. I felt like it was fairly popular, and obviously it kind of helps when you're trying to make up races. But yes,
I want to say the reason why there's no midweek races or double headers outside Pocono anyway. I want to say the reason is because the way they were building the schedule, they were building it with backups in case of any COVID-related issues that pop up next year. So I want to say they may have been trying to leave space open in case they need it.
No, honestly, they didn't get the TV ratings that they wanted. It came down to that. But TV is happy with the way that their fee structure is from their sponsors and advertisers. And look, we have a long season. It's not going to get any shorter anytime soon. We didn't mention that Dover also lost a race.
in Michigan.
Michigan lost a race
as well. Which
I'm surprised by that one. I'm not surprised by Dover. I think it'll be a time. I think there'll be a time when we may not go back to Dover. So,
and I'm the only one who hasn't said a race that I'm excited for. Being honest, I've been to Roval races as far as like the Daytona Road Course. I was there for the 2017 Rolex. I've been at the Charlotte Roval several times, but I've never been to a natural road course. So I'm excited for Road America and for COTA. As far as my schedule, knowing my other job at the college here in Mooresville, that probably leaves me with Road America as my option for next year for a natural road course.
You have 7 options next year, which is
20%.
I said a natural road course, though.
20%. Yeah, well, 20% of the schedule is road course races, which I'm okay with. I actually like road course races, but I guess we've probably gone a little long tonight. But I have to give a shout out to someone before we go. Her name is Curry. She was my waitress tonight at Dreamland Barbecue. She's a big racing fan. And I told her, I said, if you watch all the way through, I'll give you a shout out on our podcast. So hopefully she'll see it. Really a good waitress. Dreamland Barbecue in Mobile, Alabama. Amazing barbecue. And I'm from Texas, so if I say that, that's saying You guys wrap it up and let's call it a night.
Yeah. So thanks again for hanging out, everyone. And I guess my track, I'm looking forward to Nashville. That's going to be my track. But, gosh, a big shakeup with the schedule, a big shakeup with the Cup playoffs, and some big stories with Xfinity and truck playoffs coming up here in the next few weeks. It's going to be a fun second half of these playoffs to see who we get to crown as the 2020 champions. But for Seth Eggert and Zach Catanzaretti, Matt Curson, thanks again for joining us. First time on the show, and then Jared Jordan as well. Thanks for watching, and we'll hope to see you next week.
I'm going to get out of here before they arrest me.